Ukraine marked its Independence Day yesterday, the day it declared its sovereignty after the fall of the Soviet Union. The sovereignty of Ukraine has taken on added significance since the Russian invasion more than 3 years ago. Prime Minister Mark Carney was in Kyiv for the ceremonies. Roger Hilton is with the global think tank based in Slovakia. Hi, Roger.
Good evening, Mitsumi. Good evening, Montreal.
So, Mark Carney didn't rule out the possibility of Canadian troops playing some kind of security guarantee role. There are already 2,000 Canadian troops in Latvia, is that right?
That's correct. So basically, I mean, the decision by the Prime Minister to not take it off the table, I think, is a very important moment. First and foremost, it shows to Russia and it shows to our allies that we're not taking anything off the table and anything is doable at the moment. Canada is not going to play a decisive role when it comes to military. They're going to play a complementary role when it comes to training, equipment, and supporting allies. While the ceasefire and what the coalition of the willing is still to be determined, I still think strategically it's a great decision by the Prime Minister to announce it in Kiev on Independence Day, to do it. And most importantly, what you should really know about this is that this is an investment in Canada's future security by showing our closest allies and, with the Prime Minister being in Europe all week, that Canada has skin in the game, that it's willing to put its neck out, and maybe Europe will have to return the favor in the near future when it comes to something in the Arctic or when Canada needs defense. So as I said, a good decision by Mark Carney not to take it off the table and hopefully encourages other G7 NATO allies to look at it as well.
So the Prime Minister also promised $2 billion in military assistance. And, you're right. Obviously, Canada is not big enough, strong enough, wealthy enough to take a very decisive role in all this. But obviously, Mark Carney is trying to send some kind of leadership message, don't you think, in the role in the defense of Ukraine?
I think he's doing the best with what they have at the moment. I mean, DND is expecting this huge cash injection. Canada now has to hit this 5% target. And I think, it's still to be determined how they can do it. But, for instance, Mitsumi, the decision by the Prime Minister to visit a drone manufacturer in Kiev and then sort of connect them with Canadian business and look about scaling that up on an industrial level, that's really a decisive moment where Canada can play a significant role helping Ukraine. Ukraine is not counting on Canada for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. They're not counting on them for air power. So I think the decision by Canada to get involved in Ukraine has to be smart, and it's looking at those, bespoke projects where Canada can really contribute, or on the training front, I said, where they, were doing Operation Unifier in Lviv, which I had the chance to visit in 2019. So smart investments in Ukraine defense.
Some people are now saying the Ukrainian army is thought to be one of the most powerful fighting forces in Europe now. How did this happen, Roger?
I mean, clearly 2014 was really a turning point for the Ukrainian army. Prior to the annexation of Crimea and then the sort of subsequent low-intensity battle in the Donbass, Ukraine, just like Russia, was a very top-heavy, unnimble military. And the decision after those events that really shook sort of Ukraine's security establishment to adopt a non-commissioner officer program and to really veer more towards, Ukraine best standards, interoperability, has really paid huge dividends. As you can see, we're on the battlefield. There's quite a bit of autonomy in the decision-making. They don't need to run things up the chain of command, which can really increase their lethality. And the most important thing is just the sheer innovation of the Ukrainians. I mean, to innovate, whether it's on the drone warfare or, for instance, the big joke about, when they were contemplating in Washington sending them Patriot missile batteries, everybody in Congress said, oh, the Ukrainians will never be able to figure this out. This is too complicated. Here we are. We have another 2 Patriot battery missiles coming from Germany and Norway. So betting against Ukraine at your own peril, and there's still a lot left to come, as I think we'll talk about with the Flamingo missiles.
Over the weekend, Ukraine was test launching a new long-range cruise missile. Russia was building up its troops. Both sides appear to be preparing for further fighting. There's supposed to be peace talks going on. I mean, where do you see this going at this point?
I mean, it's very evident, based on the posturing by both, that both of the parties are really gearing up for one last big hurrah before the fighting season slows down, starting in the fall, going into the winter, where the conditions will be even tougher, especially for the way Russia's conducting it. But it really must be stated that this really could be a game changer, with this Flamingo missile, this cruise missile. which has a range of 3,000 kilometers. It has a massive payload, and not only can it hit strategic targets like St. Petersburg on Moscow, which for the most part has been shielded from it, apart from Moscow having some drones now and then, but it can also hit the majority of Russia's industrial defense base. So if Ukraine can really start running these off the line, this is going to be a massive issue when mixed with Ukraine's ability to do drone warfare. As we've seen, I mean, they hit 10 regions over the weekend. They're hitting oil refineries. So while Russian propaganda is trying to knock this off, this is a great development for Ukrainian defense moving forward.
So then what about these peace talks that Donald Trump is trying to negotiate? I mean, if Ukraine is doing well on the field, more than people suspect, what happens now? I mean, people assume that Russia is going to win this because Russia will take it and that he is playing into Trump. Is there any truth to any of this?
I mean, are those the people who said that Ukraine was going to fall in 3 days? I mean, again, as I said, I mean, betting against Ukraine at this point is really goes against your peril. Even before Alaska, when there was a Russian push in the Donbass about trying to to do that, Ukraine has plugged the hole. Let's be very honest. I mean, it's a very fragile and fluid situation right now for Ukraine, where they themselves are suffering from manpower. But when it comes to the peace talks, Mitsumi, I mean, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, showed up in a USSR hoodie. I mean, that there's enough said. And what is Putin giving when it comes to peace talks? He's sending a photo to President Trump, and at the same time, he's sending over 1,000 projectiles, which have hit Ukraine since they met in Alaska. So, I mean, there's really no basis at the moment for peace. Russia, even more ludicrously, said that they need to be part of any future security guarantee. So at the moment, there's no real pressure on Putin. He doesn't face economic sanctions. Apart from India, secondary sanctions haven't been put on the table for China. So for the moment, Putin really has no reason to want to slow down the war and has every reason to keep it up.
Okay, thank you very much for this, Roger.
Thank you.